Good morning, students. The next topic in Islamiyat is the Khyber Expedition. So whenever this question come in the paper, if you want to get A grade, the following points should be given in the paper. That is, main events should include dates, strength of the armies, venue of the fight, major participants, stages of the fight, and the result. Also mention names of the major killings. So these points should be written in the paper if you want to get A grade if this question come in the paper. So we are going to start now. It was fought in 629 AD, 7 AH, a year after the signing of the Treaty of the Hudaybiyah. The Prophet ﷺ had isolated the Quraysh by the Treaty of the Hudaybiyah and so was able to attack Khyber without fear, to take action against the Jews of the Khyber who had always been conspiring against the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ prepared an army of the 1600 men against 20,000 Jewish settlers. So look carefully, we have mentioned the date and the tribe, the strength, the hypocrites. So next, the hypocrites of the Medina informed the Jews of the Khyber of the attack who contacted their allies, the tribe of the Ghatafan, for help. When the Quraysh heard the news, they were jubilant, certain that the Muslims would be defeated. Surrounded like Medina with volcanic rocks and defended by 7 large fortresses, Khyber was thought to be impregnable, but the Muslims were able to benefit from the internal strife. The Muslim army encamped at Ar-Raji to prevent the mingling of the Ghatafan with the Jews of the Khyber. The Muslims reached there at night and the Jews were not aware of their approach. The next morning, they were attacked by the Muslims and had to take shelter in their fortresses. All forts were captured except Kumuz, that was under Marhab. When a number of the Muslims commanders had failed, the Prophet ﷺ sent Hazrat Ali. He fought with incredible courage and broke open the door of the fort. Marhab was killed by Ali Radhiyallahu anha in a duel. Other warriors of the Jews were also killed by the Muslims, and the last, the Jews returned to the fortresses for 3 days of the siege. The Muslims conquered the fort after a fierce fighting. When the Jews started showering stones and arrows, Muslims used catapults, which made approach easier for them. The Jews were fortified in another fort and the Muslims sieged it also for 14 days. So the Jews elders asked for peace and became vassals of the Medina. The Holy Prophet ﷺ agreed to spare the lives of the Jews on the condition that they evacuate Khyber and all the adjacent lands, leaving behind their gold and silver. Hazrat Ali was given the title of the Lion of God by the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran mentioned this victory in these words, and he made you heirs of their lands, that was Jews, their houses and their goods. And these are the words given in Surah Al-Ahzab. To seal the agreement, Muhammad ﷺ took the daughter of his old enemy Huay, chief of the Banu Nadir, as his wife. Safiya was happy to enter Islam, and Muhammad ﷺ gave stern orders that there were to be no unkind words about her father, who had died during the siege. He told Safiya that if any of his other wives taunted her about her Jewish ancestry, she should reply, "My father is Aaron and my uncle is Moses." After Hudaybiyah, He had sent a message to the Muslims exiles still resident in Abyssinia, inviting them to return now that the situation in Arabia had improved. And when he returned home, his cousin Jafar, Abu Talib's sons, whom he had not seen for 13 years, was waiting for him in Medina. Earlier that year, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam had learned that his cousin Ubaidullah ibn Jash had died in Abyssinia and decided to marry his wife Ramla, usually known by her kunya Umme Habiba. This was another shrewd political move because Umme Habiba was the daughter of the Abu Sufyan. Here is another question. Describe the Prophet ﷺ's conduct as leader in the Khyber Expedition. This is very famous question. This is very popular question which normally comes in the paper. And if this question come in the paper and if you want to get A grade, these points should be written in the paper. That is, describe briefly how leadership qualities emerged prominently and played decisive role in the battle. So the question is, describe Prophet ﷺ's conduct as leader in the Khyber Expedition. Another battle fought by Prophet ﷺ was against the Jewish settlers in Khyber. He led an army of about 1,600 troops in 7 after Hijri, that was 629 AD, against the 3 Jewish tribes of Banu Kanuka, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza that had been expelled from Medina and had been conspiring against him and his followers. The Jews shut themselves in their strong forts, but the Prophet ﷺ outsmarted them and all their forts were conquered by Muslims. Ali played heroic role in the capture of the strongest fort of Kamuz. On their surrender, the Prophet ﷺ stopped fighting and drafted a peace treaty, the Treaty of the Khyber. This was the first treaty between the Medina and the non-Meccan state. Jews were granted amnesty on condition of living peacefully and paying half of their agricultural produce as tribute to Medina. The Quran refers to this victory in these words: "And he made you heirs of their lands, their houses and their goods, and of a land which you had not frequented before. And God has power over all things." This is mentioned in Surah Ahzab. The Prophet ﷺ after this never attacked Jews and firmly adhered to the peace treaty. This way he was able to keep the Quraysh and the Jews apart. So this was a very smart move. Next question in this topic is, how does the conduct of the Prophet ﷺ in the Khyber Expedition provide a model for the Muslims today? Or this question can take another form, that is, what can Muslims leaders today learn from the Prophet ﷺ's conduct in their relations with other states? So this is the question. And if you want to get A grade in this question, the things should be written in the paper are: link the conduct of the Prophet ﷺ on this occasion with the situation in the modern world. So you have to take some examples of the present world and connect it with the conduct of the Holy Prophet ﷺ at that occasion. So we are going to read now. The Holy Prophet ﷺ is a role model in all his capacities for ordinary Muslims as well as Muslims leaders. The Quran bears witness to this when it says, "You have indeed in the messenger of God a beautiful pattern of the conduct." So this means that in all aspects of the life, we have a role model in the personality of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in all aspects of the life. So Prophet ﷺ set guiding examples on the conquest of the Khyber by drafting the Treaty of the Khyber only to stop hostilities between the Muslims and the Jews. So this was a smart move to write down a Treaty of the Hudaybiyah. that actually stops the hostilities between the two nations, between the two different religions. Muslim leaders today may make efforts to establish diplomatic ties with the Israel with the noble intention of stopping bloodshed of innocent civilians. As for Khyber, Muslims are taught to depend on God against all odds. God grants unusual powers to his servants as he did to Hazrat Ali because Marhab was considered to be the strongest ruler at that time and his fortress was imagined to be unconquerable. But God granted superpowers to Hazrat Ali, who not only killed the Marhab in a duel battle, but also conquered the strongest fort of the Jews. So Muslims should depend on the God against all odds. God grants unusual powers to his servants as he did to Hazrat Ali. If Muslims are pious and righteous, they qualify for God's help. Muslims also learn that mercy and peace should be preferred over hostility because at that time Muslims were strong enough to kill the Jews or to push them. But Prophet ﷺ preferred peace. So this is another lesson which we can learn from his conduct at that time. So peace and mercy should be preferred over hostility. When Jews offered peace, the Prophet ﷺ accepted this as he always preferred reconciliation in accordance with this Quranic command. But if your enemy inclines towards peace, you also incline towards peace and trust in God. So this is written in Surah Al-Anfal. Muslims and Jews did not fight again after the peace treaty. Muslims today should learn about the value of keeping promise as is commanded by the God and fulfill all engagements, for every engagement will be inquired into. So once the Treaty of the Hudaybiyah was written, after that Prophet ﷺ never fought with Jews. So this is another lesson we can learn from the Uqayyan, to keep the promise. This is highly stressed in Islam. So these are the questions. Make your notes. Thank you so much.